Yeah, because Saturn in Pisces wants like Saturn's like a heavy planet. It wants like grounding and tangibility. So like a little light touch of my little finger on my little mouse is not going to cut it in the ethereal realms of Pisces. So
neither are the nails that this guy is hammering into the beach.
no.
No.
And he is a very Saturnian character as well. He's like an old fella, and Saturn is associated with age. So we're all going to be asked to be mature about
ish.
Well, as mature as Pisces can be. That's one of the beautiful things about Pisces is its innocence and its idealism and its sense of possibility and imagination. But Saturn asks us to be mature. So how do we combine those qualities in a way that serves our highest good? And it's quite the contrast from Saturn in Aquarius, which has dignity there. Saturn's in the sign of rulership in Aquarius. It's very comfortable with sorting information because Aquarius is an air sign. And now we're about to take a plunge into the realm of emotions. And kind of by nature, emotions are less able to be contained. They're more free-flowing. Saturn's about boundaries, and you can see old mate there bravely trying to set a boundary, and you can also see kind of just how effective boundaries are against water. If you even think about sort of, the structures in the world around us, like, I don't know, that story of the little Dutch boy that's got his finger in the dike, like that was really important to his community. There's a lot of conversation in Australia about dams and like water at the moment because we're in that La Nina cycle. Like water is difficult to contain and control. It just comes. And there's like a tidal liminal zone. Like you can't like undo a floodplain. Once a floodplain, always a floodplain. And if you mitigate the control of the water flowing through that floodplain, there can be unintended consequences. And Saturn is a consequential planet. You do something, there's going to be like results and very tangible feedback from Saturn. So the kind of feedback that you'll be getting from Pisces is likely to be more subtle, I feel, than the more direct approach that Saturn in Aquarius would take. So you've got boundaries, limitations, constraints, cautions, discipline, structure, maturity, authority. These are Saturn words, but like I would say none of those words apply to Pisces, which is a Jupiter ruled sign. So they're kind of in a way chalk and cheese. Saturn does have some dignity in Pisces in that first decan. So I would say next year, where Saturn gets up to 7 degrees Pisces, is probably the sweet spot of Saturn's transit through Pisces. How about you, Sandra? Anything you want to throw in at this point?
Well, I think what we've got with the progression of Saturn in Aquarius into Pisces is Aquarius is about society. So we've seen all of the rules and restrictions around society become such a hot topic over the last couple of years. And as Saturn moves into Pisces, and we do get that sweet spot in the first 10 degrees, it's about the underdog. It's about championing the downtrodden, the disadvantaged. And we've already seen little bits of this come through with gender fluidity and discrimination against disabled people, and behaviours that people feel confronted by have become a real hot topic on social media. I think when Saturn is diving into Pisces, we're going to see a lot more of that, and we're going to see a lot more discourse about, if I'm offended by this, but you're okay with this, where do we find that middle ground? And you're not going to find it while Saturn's in Pisces, but it's going to bring that stuff up from the deep. And the other thing with Saturn moving from Aquarius, where it is rules, but personal rules, and then society rules, now we come into Saturn in Pisces, where rules are, you know what, not today. So it'll be really interesting to see how that's going to play out in the greater world, but how it's going to play out for us. Do we chase our dreams, or do we just go bugger it and have another drink? Like it's a fine line there between Saturn wanting this and Pisces wanting this. Where's that middle ground?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we accomplish or don't, what we're willing to work on or not, and I think the quality of relationships, because a lot of water signs are invested in relationships and emotional entanglements, which are essentially what relationships are. That, is it worth it to like work on this relationship by exploring this boundary and like finding where it is, and probably discovering that it moves person to person, and depending on how emotionally invested you are in maintaining that relationship and what you let slide. I also think that moodiness will drive a lot of what you accomplish or not. So like your mood on the day, Pisces is a mutable sign, so it's very changeable. And I also think perhaps not so much next year, but like definitely keep an eye on it, that melancholy could strike. Like there's this idea of, well, what could be, because Pisces is such a imaginative sign, and it's driven by higher ideals, and Saturn's reality. So reality and idealism smashing up against each other. Like there's often a gap there, and that could lead to depleted moods. So yeah, like, and then you get to that point of who cares? Just have a drink, as Sandra helpfully mentioned. So I also think that a way of tuning into where you're at emotionally with the challenges and the lessons, and the tasks. Saturn's really task oriented. Like, so Saturn will ask something of you while moving through Pisces, and it will relate to the house of your chart. So when the moon moves through Pisces and conjunct Saturn, that's a really good time to check in with yourself emotionally, and explore, well, if I'm in a bad mood about that encounter with that person, could I like firm up my boundaries so I don't end up feeling like, a wet blanket again? There's points of reflection, and I think the moon's conjunction to Saturn once a month is a really good way of checking in with yourself without kind of overdoing the inward looking, the guilt trip that you could potentially put yourself on, like, coulda, woulda, shoulda, I didn't feel like it, and having those kind of regrets and things like that.
I think wet blanket is a perfect metaphor for Saturn in Pisces.
Yeah.
I also, with Pluto changing signs, which we'll get to soon, but Saturn in Pisces, we're going to see a lot more people needing help. And so a good way to remediate any of the melancholy or any of the less positive sides of Saturn in Pisces, go and volunteer. Donate stuff to a needy cause. Take that energy and externalize it, because Saturn in Pisces is going to be heavy. It is Pisces is very deep water, and Saturn moving through that is not going to be elegant.
No, it's gonna so watch for that feeling of sinking down. And yeah, I guess this is where you lean on those relationships, the person throwing you the life buoy, that sense of connection and help. Pisces is a compassionate sign, and Saturn is a practical planet, so there will be a practical way that you can help someone else, and in the process, because those boundaries are so blurry, you will help yourself. Another little point, I think, with Saturn in Pisces is discipline. It's almost like a dirty word these days because, 40-hour weeks and, having so much to do and things. But discipline and disciple have the same root word. So there's this opportunity to get back to spiritual routines, perhaps even traditional religious practices, if you have that in your background. Saturn is a solitary planet, so those moments that you have through meditation or inner work, those times of inner spiritual reflection, are very likely to offer fruit with Saturn in Pisces. The same with any artistic practice that you have. Bringing some discipline to those creative processes, like, whether you're a painter or you're a poet, or you like to get creative in the kitchen or in your garden. Like, we all have that creative outlet in our life some way, and Saturn can bring discipline, as well as the rewards offered to the disciple by adding structure to that activity. What have I written? I've written all sorts of things. Yeah, so there's the possibility of concrete results by bringing some containment to that wild Piscean wandering that we have. There's also the flip side of Saturn is denial. And it may be that you go the other way. So, I think in astrology, it's always best to avoid extremes. And if you have a tendency to go to an extreme, like, I think poor boundaries with your work, perhaps you're Gemini rising and you have Pisces at the top of your chart, you could tend towards overwork. So those lack of boundaries in the workplace brings denial to your creative outlet. So that's just kind of like one example how that could play out. So bringing some structure and some boundaries to that separation of activities could, help you. And that is how you could work with Saturn in Pisces there.
Yeah, it's a slowly building, because this is the Saturn, towards your ideals, which is Pisces. And they're not comfortable bedfellows, but they can be really rewarding, because Saturn is rewarding, particularly for those of us who are here today. We've already had a Saturn return. So you've got that feel for it. And that 7 years isn't a long time, but it is building and working towards something through the Saturn cycles. And Saturn in Pisces is definitely an idealistic place for Saturn to be in. So it's making things that are ethereal tangible, and it's not a bad place to be sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I also think it's a really great opportunity to get in touch with any emotional vulnerabilities and fears that you may have, been dealing with. And Saturn makes you face reality. So you can look at those and go, well, is this thing really as scary as what I thought it was? Am I really like the little, snowflake that, my dad calls me? You can delve into that stuff and go, well, is this true? And Saturn will give you a straight answer. So there's opportunities there as well. And it's going to be interesting.
2023 will be interesting. It's going to be big with a capital B.
It will. So that's a taster. Oh, let's have a look at when, the facts, the astrological facts. Here's the data. So we don't get Saturn moving into Pisces until the 7th of March, but there's no hurry to accomplish all this in the space of a few months. It's a long transit. Saturn stays in a sign for about 2.5 years. So you've got until May 2025 to do all that stuff that we just talked about. When Saturn changes direction, the Saturnian energy will intensify, and you look at that 7 degrees of Pisces and also Taurus. That June period is a peak. It's a peak of that Saturnian energy, but it's speaking to Jupiter, which is the ruler of Pisces. So I think it will ultimately kind of point you to your Saturn in Pisces story, particularly if you've got planets or points around those degrees. And then that all becomes quite internalized because the planet will be retrograde. But by the end of November, you'll kind of have some clarity around what you need to kind of get on with. Till then, you'll probably just be like churning internally, ruminating on it, meditating on it, doing all that good stuff. Here are Sandra's details. She really does make beautiful remediation products. I'm wearing some mercury beads right now. You know, with
which is my first. Oh my God! Hi, Maria. Yeah, I've got some behind
and
me.
she makes beautiful spritzes as well. They're like really, really lovely as well. So yeah, and it plays to just kind of like have a play with this stuff and you know, see how it goes for you. I think remediation is a nice sort of overlap between witchcraft and astrology. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a whole big thing. I think astrological magic has a heavy masculine leaning, and there is a bit of play there. You know, sometimes you just need something. So these moments are really valuable for getting amongst. Here's my little bit of promo. I am now calling my membership group Magical Mentoring because I want to get into juicier stuff. We talk about astrology, but also this magical and spiritual context that is part of it. And I'm also offering the Pleiades, which is a peer support circle for metaphysical professionals. We've got Kylie here. She's a member of that group. Kylie's a psychic medium. So yeah, we talk about all the business stuff that we have happening in the background. So those will be opening up, you know, they're in a bit of a lull for Christmas and New Year, but we'll be opening up very soon for 2023 with a heap of enthusiasm that I'm bringing to it. So if you interested in finding out more about that, hit me up. That is I'm not so much on social media anymore, but pretty much you can find me, Kim Fairminer, on Facebook, Astrology, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. There's my website. Most of you know how to find me, and I've got my phone number. Give me a damn call. I'm a Gemini. You can ring me